Hello, and welcome to a brand new Developer Diary series for my current 5200 project. This is Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, the long awaited home video game adaptation of the classic holiday film. So, in case you're wondering, did this guy get the rights to Santa Claus Conquers the Martians? The answer is kinda. So, if you didn't know, the film is actually in the public domain, so I can do whatever I want to with it, including making this exciting home video game adaptation. So, what do we have here, and what is the overall plan for this game? So, the idea that I'm running with here is something very much like Jungle Hunt, if you're familiar with that game. So, Jungle Hunt is a series of 4 different stages, but they all play very differently from each other. And I thought that was a really neat idea for a movie-based game because I could grab different scenes from the movie and make effectively completely different games out of them. So in this case, I've chosen 5 scenes from the movie, and I'm planning to write a separate level for each of those 5 scenes, and you'll play them in a loop, and then you'll start over, and it'll get harder, and so on, as games like this used to do back in the day. And I've started working on the first of those 5, let's call them mini games, and that's what I wanted to show here, even though it doesn't really do a whole lot at this point, but I just want to demonstrate that progress is being made. So the first scene in the film that I'm adapting to this game is a scene that occurs, I don't know, maybe about halfway through the movie, but it's the part where the Martians go to the North Pole to kidnap Santa Claus. Now, at this point in the film, they have also kidnapped a pair of Earth children named Billy and Betty for rather suspicious reasons. And the 2 children escape from the Martian ship and are trying to get to Santa's workshop to warn him that the Martians are coming to kidnap him. And I thought, this might be a good opening level because it really is the first part of the movie with any real action to it. So, hey, why not start here? So the goal of this stage is to take one of the 2 Earth children and guide them to the right, toward the right. The screen will eventually scroll. It doesn't do that yet. But to make your way to the right in an attempt to reach Santa's workshop before you're captured by Voldar, the evil Martian, who's essentially the movie's villain, or the polar bear, which... If you've seen the movie, you probably remember the polar bear. There's a brief moment in the film where a polar bear appears and chases off Voldar, and it's clearly just this guy in a really, really bad polar bear costume. And I thought, man, I've got to put the polar bear in this game. So, while Voldar and the polar bear are not present yet, they will be eventually. So right now I just have this test sprite down in the lower left corner, which is going to be one of the kids, and I'll move it around here. And you can freely move it around this little board I've put together. Now, one interesting thing about this sprite is I'm using a mode here that I've never used before on this system, and it's called multicolor sprite mode. Now, ordinarily on the 5200, you have 4 player sprites and 4 missile sprites, and the sprites are single color objects ordinarily. Well, actually, all the time. But what multicolor player mode does is it makes it so that if you overlap players 0 and 1, the pixels where they overlap become a different color. And similarly for players 2 and 3. So here, this little child I've created is a combination of players 0 and 1. And there are 3 colors there. There's sort of the greenish color that's his hat and pants, and there's like a bluish color, it's his jacket, and kind of an orangish skin tone color. I believe the green color is the overlap color, if I remember right. I'd have to look at the code to be sure. But one of the downsides of this mode is that you don't actually get to pick what the third overlapped color is. It actually is derived from the color codes for the other 2 colors. And I don't remember the exact formula for that. I'll probably need to look that up before I get super in-depth into this. But this is just a placeholder for now. So the gist of this stage is that you're going to take one of the Earth children, Billy and Betty, and in the long term I would like you to be able to choose which one you want to play and give them different attributes, but I'm a long way from that at this point. So I don't know which child this is supposed to be. I call it Billy in the code, but it could be either one. So the gist of it, though, is that you're supposed to move to the right while avoiding Voldar and the polar bear, and along the way, I haven't done this part yet, obviously, but this whole thing is going to be filled in different ways. I'm planning to have snow fill in parts of the screen, so it kind of obscures the paths, and then certain parts of the screen will be blocked off. So essentially I'm going to create a maze. So I need to write some sort of maze generation algorithm that's going to fill in all these details. And you need to dig through the snow to uncover the paths that will get you to the right. And until you hit the solid areas, you don't know where they are because the snow's in the way. So you need to experiment, probe, dig your way through, try to find the right path. Now, one thing I was thinking was that the polar bear could travel on top of the snow. So you could watch the polar bear and see where the polar bear is walking, because that'll tell you that that is at least a path you can take. But I'm not anywhere close to implementing that yet. And on top of that, I also wanted to have little hidey holes. So if you watch the film, there's a part where the two kids hide in kind of a little dugout, kind of snow cave area where they hide from Voldar and the polar bear. So I thought, that's an element I could throw into the game. So I planned to add, at certain points in the screen, probably regular intervals, there'll be a little cave, little hidey hole you can jump into to get away from Voldar and the polar bear. But there needs to be some other pressure forcing you to move. And this is where I took some inspiration from Frostbite on the 2600, where in that game you go through a series of stages, and on each stage there's a temperature gauge, which is constantly dropping, and if it gets too low, you freeze to death and die. And in the movie, one of the kids, I'm pretty sure it's Betty, is complaining a lot about how cold it is at the North Pole, rightfully so. So I thought I'd take that same temperature gauge idea and use that as a time limit that you have to, to beat to get to the end of the stage before you freeze. And at the bottom of the screen there, I just have the number 012. I was just testing my text area. But the bottom of the screen is a text area where I plan to have that temperature readout, probably your score, lives display, things like that. So that is kind of the general gist of it, is you need to constantly make your way to the right, digging through the snowdrifts, trying to find the correct path, while Voldar and the polar bear are trying to hunt you down. And you can duck into the caves to protect yourself, kind of like Night Stalker, where we have that base in the middle you can jump into. And that's really kind of the idea I'm running with. Now, another thing I'm considering is to throw the stun gun in there. If you watch the film, the Martians have these stun guns that look like hair dryers with some extra pieces bolted on. And I thought, well, what if you could find one of these stun guns? Again, kind of a throwback to Night Stalker on the television, where you find guns in the maze, and every gun you pick up gives you 6 shots, and then you have to go find another one. And I thought maybe you could come across one of these stun guns and pick it up, and that would give you a one-shot stun against either Voldar or the polar bear that would temporarily freeze it, to get it off your trail or whatever. But that's the general concept I'm running with for this first stage. And so I've got very little done at this point. The game's moving a little more slowly than I had anticipated. I've been busy with other projects, mostly with trying to get Magical Fairy Force on the PC finally released, which has a Steam page now, but it hasn't been formally released yet. But I did want to just show that progress is being made, and I am moving forward on this. And in the future, as I get more done, I'll certainly post more videos to show what's going on. I also have a thread on this at the AtariAge.com forums and the Atari 5200 section, where I go into things in a bit more detail and some of the other plans. So if you're interested, definitely go check that out. But for now, I think we'll be wrapping this video up. So stay tuned for future updates on this and all of my other projects.